everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This year, one of my New Year's resolutions is to get rid of some of the convenience foods that have extra ingredients that may not be the healthiest. Recently, I have changed over to homemade seasoning blends that I'd love to share with you. So join me today as I restock my pantry with some of my favorites and make a couple meals for my family on this cozy Saturday. This past week, we had some out-of-town visitors, so I was making breakfast every day. Today, I kept it super simple, just bacon, eggs from our chickens that are finally laying again, and some leftover French toast. first seasoning blend that I do here is an onion soup mix. My family, we have a lot of onion dip around the holidays, so it is something that I like to keep on hand just so people come over. That way I have a quick snack. So here I made my own. Okay, so I doubled the recipe for this. I put half a cup of dried onion flakes, 4 tablespoons of beef bouillon, half a teaspoon of onion powder, half teaspoon parsley, a quarter teaspoon celery seeds, quarter teaspoon paprika, and a quarter teaspoon of black pepper. Now, I will say that we did test this out too, and it does taste great. Some of my seasoning was a little bit, I don't know the word, chunky, so I would maybe blend it up just to make a little bit more like the onion soup mix that we all know and love. So I just made sure to put ×2 on the jar when I labeled it, just so I know that half of this jar will make a 16-ounce container of sour cream. And I will be sure to link this and the other seasoning blends in the description box below. So the next mix I like to make is pot roast seasoning. So this is just super simple, super easy. If you have purchased the Crock-Pot brand pot roast seasoning in the packet, this is a good copycat for that. I did do 4 times the recipe that I linked below into a pint jar. So I have 4 tablespoons of garlic powder, 4 tablespoons of onion powder, 2 tablespoons thyme, 2 tablespoons parsley, 8 teaspoons smoked paprika, 4 teaspoons rosemary, 8 teaspoons of pepper, and 4 tablespoons of salt. So I just mix this with a cup of water after I sear my pot roast, and I pour it right over the top. Super easy and delicious. This next one is one of my favorite homemade ranch seasoning blends. So with this seasoning, I just mix it with about a half a cup of mayo, half a cup of sour cream, and sometimes I will add a little bit of milk or a little bit of buttermilk just to thin it out a little bit. So it really just depends on what you want. But I did do 4 times this recipe. Now 8 times this recipe will fit into a half pint jar, but 4 times this recipe I did 4 teaspoons of dried dill, 2 teaspoons of parsley, 2 teaspoons of chives, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, and half teaspoon of pepper. You can also add some lemon juice to the bowl when you actually put it all together. Really needed to restock my taco seasoning, so I did that while I had everything out. I doubled the recipe that is in the description box below. I did 2 tablespoons of chili powder, 3 teaspoons of cumin, 2 teaspoons of sea salt, 2 teaspoons of pepper, 1 teaspoon of paprika, half a teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of onion powder, half a teaspoon of red pepper, and half a teaspoon of oregano. So next I am going to put together some brownie mix. I will usually buy the Ghirardelli brownie mix from Costco, but I am out of that and I wanted to make something with a little bit more simple ingredients. So I am just going to fill these 4 jars with some flour, cocoa powder, sugar, baking powder, and salt is all it is. You will mix this recipe with some butter, some eggs, and some vanilla and pop it in the oven. I will probably add some chocolate chips to mine. So now I'm just starting with the flour in each one of these jars, and then I will add the cocoa powder. So right about here is when I realized that I had messed up. I had put a whole cup of flour into these jars and have already put the cocoa powder on top. So this is kind of when I make the quick decision to just double the recipe in each jar. So what I put in each one of these jars will make a 9 by 13 pan of brownies, which is quite a bit and not what I was wanting, but I already mixed the cocoa powder with the flour. So now I'm just going to add a second measuring of cocoa powder. So I have 2/3 a cup of cocoa powder in each one of these jars and 1 whole cup of flour so far. And I made a big mess with the cocoa powder. I got it in my flour, so I had to clean that up afterwards. I'll show you the mess that I made here in just a second. But I add some sugar. So this is going to be 2 cups of sugar. So I have 4 scoops here. I have a half a cup in my hand. And I also realized that this is probably not going to fit in these jars. I did make it work because there are only a couple other ingredients, a half teaspoon of salt and a half teaspoon baking powder. So it's really easy to just throw there on top. But yeah, I realized at this point that I might need to make another coffee. I have a 4-month-old going through a sleep regression, and maybe I shouldn't be doing this right now. But I had fun. I'm excited to try these out. On these jars, I did label what I need to put with it. I only actually labeled 1 jar, but it will be a full cup of butter and 4 eggs, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla because I did double the recipe by accident. And here is my lovely mess of flour with cocoa powder. That was fun. I got the seasoning blends done just in time for the sourdough to be pulled out of the oven, and we will have this with our lunch. As far as lunches go in my house, I typically don't make a special lunch, maybe here and there on the weekends. So this was a special day. My little boy, who is 3, had been asking for soup every day since I made it a couple weeks ago. So I decided to make some corn chowder, and I used my bone broth. The cold is running through my household, so I thought this would be good to have. And I actually saved it in some cubes that I froze, and I vacuum sealed those. So we will have it for a good lunch in the future. My favorite way to store broth, chili, soup, or anything of that nature are in these super cubes. So here I am just melting them down to put them in the soup. I actually didn't make lunch this day. We just had a little bit more of this soup for dinner, or we had a couple leftovers in the fridge. We had a late lunch, so we weren't very hungry. for spending this Saturday in the kitchen with me. I hope that this inspired you to make a little bit more of your food from scratch.